Hey, Cass.
Hey, what's up?
Nothing much. It's kind of weird. We're sitting on the same side of the table today.
Yeah, I don't really like it.
You
kind of smell a little.
It is what it is. Sorry, buddy. You're stuck for the next hour.
Well.
Over here on this side of the table, because we have something that's a little bit different today. We have some guests here. So we actually have other human beings that decided to come on with us.
Yay.
And talk. So from Qualigence, we have Melissa, who's the delivery director.
Hi.
And we have Jen, who's director of marketing and communications.
Hello.
And Cassim, do you know why they're here today?
No, I don't.
Me neither. So.
We're unsure ourselves. We were forced here.
I sent an email to their boss, and I'm kidding. There's been an interesting phenomenon in the world today, right? Through COVID, as we've probably talked about this 100,000 times, and it always poses the same question: where did all the people go, right? And when I asked you guys that question 5 minutes ago, I got a bunch of blank stares as to like, oh, we don't know. And so for like an audience overview, Qualigence is a staffing, recruiting, research company that helps companies like ours fill spots and fill roles on a regular basis and things like that. And so, this is a question that Casper and I always talk about when we're hiring in our company, even on the tech side, which is kind of a whole different ballgame, which you guys are very involved in. We always pose a question like, where did everybody go? And it seems really, really weird and interesting because like the population hasn't changed, right? And the economy's been kind of getting better and better, maybe up until this point. But it seems like the workforce, there's like way more jobs than there are people. And things in like the supply chain, which we'll talk about a little bit later, has really, really, really suffered. And I think a lot of it is the lack of people too. So I pulled stats online because I just like numbers. I like to see like what's out there.
Dork.
I do. Yes, I am. And with that being so, like I looked at like 2009, like the recession, right? 08, 09.
Yeah.
And the peak unemployment rate was 10%, and that's at 15,219,000 people, right? Which is a lot of people out of a job, and we all know that was a really tough time for people. And then I looked at the pandemic rates, and I was actually blown away that the pandemic rates were significantly higher than like the 09 crash. So the pandemic rate, 23,038,000 people, 13.2% unemployment rate at the start of the pandemic. Now, just prior to that, so January 2020, it was only at 5.7 million, which was at 3.5%. And that is technically where we're at today. We're back to like 5.9 million at 3.6%. So we've had a huge loss of a huge unemployment, gain over COVID. But it seems to have like a much worse effect than when we had it in 09, right?
Yeah.
So it always poses the question, what happened?
That's a good question. Yeah, I mean, I remember 08, 09. I was actually in logistics then, and I was let go, and took me probably a good year almost to find a job. And I was interviewing a couple times a month,
right,
consistently, and going to like third round interviews and everything. So I do remember that. It's interesting because in recruiting, you always have to pay attention to the market because, it's either an employee market or an employer market.
Right.
It's been an employee market for sure because there are so many job openings and not enough people to actually fill them.
Right. I pulled that number too. 11.4 million jobs open right now. 5.9 million people unemployed.
Yes. So. Which is an interesting time to be recruiting because I've seen ups and downs where it's been back and forth, and it usually switches, but this has been the longest that it's been an employee market during COVID.
How does that affect people not like going back to work? Because like the unemployment number doesn't account for people who aren't looking for a job.
Sure.
Right. Is that a factor here?
Yeah, I think there were a couple of factors. When COVID started, a lot of companies, including us, went remote very quickly. But I know some people, but I also know that when COVID happened and things with schools changed and all of that, a lot of people were either forced to stay home or it was cheaper for them to stay home for childcare and all of that, or extenuating circumstances with taking care of relatives and things. So it's definitely been challenging in many ways. Because when you're trying to help clients, because they've had openings for over a year, that's very unusual.
That's wild.
Unless it's a unicorn position, which we know they're probably not going to want to fill, but just to have basic positions like HR or IT, engineering especially, is difficult.
So when I hire for IT, like the techs, I do get a ton of resumes, like a ton of them.
Sure.
But I will say that what would you say, like 85% of them are not even close to qualified?
Yeah.
Like that many. And when I say not even close to qualified, I mean like not even an internship for a month in a tech role, right? I have people who apply that like are dishwashers at restaurants, which,
Sure.
more power to them. But,
Yeah.
We need a little bit of experience
Yeah.
to field phone calls. What are you seeing on the front of that? Like you mentioned that you have a job open for a year, or there are jobs open for a year. What's happening?
Their internal HR is having trouble because typically they're going to rely on applicants, or they're going to rely on employee referrals.
Right.
And when that's not happening, corporate recruiting in general, it's like one touch outreach type of thing. That's why for us, having the research department and being able to find, you need phone numbers. You have to contact probably double at least what you used to before.
Wow.
To even get one response to say yes or no. So it's longer. It takes longer to fill a position.
And when you say like to say yes or no, you're talking about like reaching out to possible candidates.
So passive candidates that aren't looking for jobs, reaching out to say, would like to get to know you better, want to see, love your career background.
Right.
What's your next step? Getting them to talk.
Yeah.
It takes usually like double digits to get them to say, yeah, I'll talk with you, or no, I'm not interested.
That's so strange to me, just because like, what do they call it? The Great Resignation, right? They were saying like 44% of people are considered job seekers that are currently in a job. I mean, almost half, right? Don't leave. So, but like, so that's actually wild to me, because I would assume that number would drop. It would be easier for you guys to fill that spot.
No, and that's why we use marketing a lot, internally and externally for clients, because you have to get creative on how you're doing outreach, because there are 3,000 other recruiters doing the same thing and messaging the same people, especially in industries like tech and IT that are desperate for people. Nursing is another one where we have a lot of clients that want us to do nurse recruiting, and we don't because it's so difficult.
we actually stay out of medical also, like, in general.
Yeah. So that's why we use marketing a ton, just because we have to. And we have our clients do that as well, because you can't just do what you were doing 2 years ago and hoping that it works.
And on the marketing front, like what are you doing to kind of like help bring these candidates to the forefront? Because a lot of that is probably more inbound, I would assume.
So we basically help the recruiting team by providing them with assets, landing pages, one-sheeters, things like that, where when they're having those conversations, they can say, let me send this to you, and everything is right there for the potential prospect or candidate. So it makes their life a little bit easier, but makes it a little bit different of an experience for the candidate to open it up for them to want to talk to our recruiters.
But I assume that helps them get from kind of point A to point B a lot easier, which gives you guys the advantage of finding somebody.
Definitely.
Yeah.
So on like the tech side, because a lot of what we talk about is tech, on the specific tech side, are you finding that you're getting a ton of resumes like we are?
No.
No?
No.
Really?
No. No. Just because, depending on the company ask, there's, going back into the office, and now where a lot of people are like, well, I've been working remote for 2 years and I don't want to do that. I mean, you take out half of the population of what you're looking for with just that. And so that's been difficult, but there's hotbeds in certain cities like Austin, San Francisco, even Detroit is a great tech city. So when you have a ton of people living there all doing the same thing, the population gets very oversaturated for those positions.
I see. So then there's some competition, to your point, for a company to say we want, it almost becomes more of an employer market in that area, would you say? Mm-hmm. Because now they have a higher pool.
Yeah.
That's interesting. So now on the supply chain side of things, right, we order technology. Mm-hmm. Technology has chips. We know about the chip shortage, things like that. We see it all across the industry, including cars. Mm-hmm. Cars delivered without chips, things like that, which is wild. What I've equated to that is like a twofold deal, right? We had COVID, so everyone stopped working, which put a huge backlog in manufacturing, but people still were working on our side and still ordering stuff, right? Mm-hmm. So there was a huge backlog of orders that happened. But then I'm hearing things like, we don't have enough truck drivers. We don't have enough people at the docks. We don't have enough people, unloading the ships. We don't have enough people, just manual labor, like all that stuff. We don't have enough factory workers. What are you guys in that world at all?
Yeah. Yeah, we sometimes, it depends on the client where we've been very, had to really evaluate because I come from that world as well. And it's very difficult to staff manufacturing because it's just high volume overturn.
Yeah.
And we don't have an ATS like agencies do to be able to do that and have our own pool of temp candidates ready to go. So we are very selective with that, but the clients that we have done, we've used marketing a couple times for like some landing pages and things. We tend to stay away from that just because it is so volatile and it goes so up and down.
Yeah.
It's very difficult to do direct hire roles at like $10, $11 an hour in obscure locations in the middle of Indiana or something.
That's a good point. Yeah.
It's tough. So we stay away from it quite a bit. Just because it's tough to
and I
fill.
think people too have just decided $11 isn't worth being
Yeah.
overworked.
I mean, right? Because you can go to Taco Bell and make that.
You can go to
Starbucks,
Taco Bell and make 14
Amazon.
and 15.
Well, that's
an
right,
hour,
right.
Yeah,
Yeah,
Amazon,
exactly.
yeah.
So I think people a lot of people in those kind of manufacturing roles, warehouse roles, things like that, they're just like, I don't have to work like this. There's other things out there, and they're finding them.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, what does that mean? Like on the consumer side, we talk about this too. Yeah. Like, what are you experiencing on the consumer side when you order a product or like even customer service?
Yeah, a lot less quality when it comes to the people that we work with nowadays. So, you go and try to communicate with support that you're used to being actually good. And it turns out that they don't know anything themselves, and they're just starting in the role, and they've been just scooped up into it just because, the companies that are trying to hire, they're so desperate. They just need to grab whoever they can find. And then we end up suffering on our side whenever we want to, use their services, or whoever needs to use their services. So
Absolutely.
Yeah.
that's how I've seen it. I've kind of witnessed that initially, but I don't know. To me, it's just kind of weird when you look at it, because the people or the communities or the people that used to fill certain types of positions or roles, where did they go? Did they like you said, are they just increasing their demand for better, or did they take that time during COVID and increase their education or get better, get more skills, and then flip to something else?
Yeah.
I mean, if you look at COVID, it was a really big time for us to reflect. And I think a lot of us had so much time that we kind of sat on the couch initially for our first couple months and then thought, I don't like where I'm at, and let me improve. And maybe everyone did that. And then now everyone's at that level where they can kind of demand those higher level jobs. And we just don't have enough, you know? I don't know. That's like, I guess how I think about it.
Flip side of the coin too is you could have that older population that was working, even retirees working at restaurants and things that they're just like, I don't have to do this. I'm retired. And that's a big pool of people.
Through all the crap that happened, right?
Right. I mean,
that's a great point.
That's a big group of people. I mean, there are still some baby boomers out there that are working because they just like to be a greeter, or they like to bus tables or whatever. And they're like, you know what? I don't need to be around people and get sick. I can go be retired and sit in my recliner and watch TV or whatever they're doing. Right. So
that's a really good point. I think a lot of people maybe even took early retirement too. Maybe that we're going to work another 5 years, and they were like, you know what? I don't have to.
Or companies even booted them out,
bought them out earlier, or offered them earlier retirements. Why not? And that is, I didn't think that's a
I do think point. That's a bigger issue than what people are talking about, because,
I wonder if another factor, because I ponder this, is entrepreneurship. Right? I mean, how many people do you know that have started businesses through COVID?
Yeah.
Right? I mean, I know tons of people who like, I'll just go on Facebook. All of a sudden, I'm starting this new venture. I'm starting this new venture. I'm like, oh my goodness. Like,
Instagram, Snapchat. TikTok. You can make a lot of money doing
influencers.
It seems like a culture shift, honestly, in America. Because like people, like we talked about, people kind of like, they want something better for themselves, and they don't want to necessarily trade all their time for money anymore. They kind of want to have more freedom, so
that's a good point too. Not everybody is, and I really think the generation that's kind of coming up, they want to make a difference, but I don't think they're happy working in a coffee shop and making a difference in whatever way they they choose to make the difference. You know,
Right.
they go up and pick up garbage on the weekends or, you know, encourage recycling, things like that. So like these high paying jobs that kids were once going to school for they don't really matter anymore to them.
Yeah.
That's fair.
But until the norm becomes I can't get my package for 6 months.
Yeah, that's
Right?
frustrating.
Then that becomes an issue, I feel like.
Yeah.
Or when you saw the container ships in the ocean and
my
Santa
goodness.
Claus on the jet ski flying around. I'm going, you know, I
Yeah.
mean, that was the reality, right? Like,
Yeah.
don't get your kids anything that could potentially be coming over on a container ship.
Right.
I think more than just a culture shift, it was just we had to shift because, again, we were here in Livonia. We still are, but everybody was here. We never had anybody out of state.
Right.
We have had folks move that lived here in Michigan and decide
Right.
we're able to move because of COVID. We
Yeah.
now have, like, I believe we're up to 20 maybe. I should know this, but everybody new has been not local.
Right.
But that
And-
opened up our talent pool because,
Yeah.
Right.
you know, you can only, you know, your circle of area and you can only find those people so
Right.
much. Kind of like the oversaturation.
Yeah.
We can find people now.
And
So-
Jen had to, I mean, marketing in general, not many, I mean, they're great because they do a lot of outside things. And for them and Steve, even our CEO, was a big shift because they were going to events all of the time. And COVID made
Right.
them change that
Right.
until they were doing a lot of virtual events. But that was different for us. You guys are finally back out and doing those things normally. But that was 2 years of, you know, not going for us not to go see clients.
Yeah.
Yeah, we pulled out the I guess exhibit
Yeah.
stuff and looked, and it was like, you know, the old wrapper on it from like 2 years ago.
Yeah.
We're like, we haven't looked at this in literally
Yeah.
2 years.
How did that feel?
It was weird. It was really weird.
Yeah,
But
but
it was
is
cool.
cool. Yeah,
Yeah.
it's cool to go back to. We went to TEDx. Was it October or something in Detroit? And it was a smaller one because they pared it down. Obviously,
Right.
trying safety precautions and stuff still, but it was really fun. That was like one of the first things we had gotten to go back to, where you felt like, all right, this
All the
is
people
normal.
are here.
Yeah, like this is a little bit normal, and you know, we get to go see clients, and that stopped for 2 years, and that was tough because of video is great. But going face to face with your clients is
Yeah.
a lot different.
There's no comparison.
Yes.
I really believe there's no comparison to
Yes.
that. Yeah.
We did get to see you guys though. So
Yeah.
that
True.
was-
That's true.
Just down the street, you know?
Yeah, that's true. Yeah, you guys let us in your building, so
even though you locked me out of the supply.
Yeah. Just reboot it, right?
But yeah, I think it was just it's different. I think more than just a culture shift. I think it's just how everyone was working in general completely changed, and we're back and we have a group back in the office pretty regularly.
Yeah.
But a lot of people decided to stay home because they've got their routines now, and
Right.
that's totally okay, you know.
Yeah.
But
But how does that feel on a culture standpoint, though?
it's weird,
It's changed.
Right?
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, just even I had a meeting with a new hire today, and I'm like, oh yeah, back before COVID, we used to do this, and it's like, oh, we used to do a lot of stuff
Yeah.
back before COVID.
Yeah.
Not that we're not trying and doing things now. It's just
it's harder.
it's just
Yeah.
different.
because we're
Definitely.
doing something in August and it's a mystery bus. But we are flying everybody in, and
Oh,
we
wow.
haven't seen everybody since the Christmas party back in
If they
December.
came.
If they came,
Right.
and that was the first time we saw half of our new employees was
Wow.
in person there. So it's just different because, like Jen said, we did stuff. I felt like every other week we were having something like a barbecue or just a
Yeah,
you
it's
know.
like family bonding in a sense,
Yes.
right? And
Yeah.
that's like, so we're completely in office here, and we actually have been through COVID.
Yeah.
And it was primarily because we're a smaller company,
Sure.
right? And we wanted to
Same
build
for
that,
us,
like, that culture and kind of work that. And I think that was a big part of why we're also in the office. But I mean, even like when there's nothing to do, which isn't often, you know, we go goof around, like shoot the basketball in the back and like hang out. We just get to know each other better. And I don't know, it's kind of the same way like how we build rapport with the clients,
Sure.
right? Like it gives each other more grace and more like time to work with each other. Like I feel like terminations or, you know, like 2-week notices from the team or whatever, like become less hard to deal with because you're like friends. It's like, oh, I want what's best for you.
Sure.
And on the remote front, like, don't get me wrong, there's definitely ways to build that culture. There's definitely ways to like work with your team. But I feel like that emotional aspect of like being individuals and like people isn't like quite there.
Yeah.
And I would say the group that comes in is a pretty close knit group
Yeah.
that does come into the office,
Yeah.
and
Because we've been doing that since COVID
since we
broke
were
a bit
allowed,
and we were allowed
yeah.
to. Yeah.
Yeah.
And it's been the same group of people. But yeah, it's a lot different. The video stuff again is still, but to your point, like just seeing somebody in person is completely different.
Yeah.
Although if we didn't have video during COVID, I
Oh,
don't
geez.
know.
Oh, that'd be
we
brutal.
Surprised.
Imagine this like 15 years ago when the conference phones were just that little round thing on the table.
We still have one of those.
We do. I actually had to go on a conference call. I don't even know how to do this anymore.
I deactivated that not too long ago, by the way.
It wasn't. It wasn't in the office.
It was
a whole
weird.
different story.
Like when I started, we would never did video ever.
Yeah.
Only one. It would be weird if a client was like, "Hey, let's get on Zoom." You're like, "Why?"
Yeah, exactly. I'll just head over there.
Here, give me, because we used to send out our conference lines before and have to put them in the calendar invites and
put
all
the
that.
PIN number. And
now
all that.
I couldn't even tell you what my conference line, if I even had one anymore.
Yeah.
I don't, but
Yeah.
it's just odd way to now think that we didn't.
On the flip side, what's interesting is back when it was conference calls and we had to like dress up for work and like look nice and professional. And now it's kind of like, not that we can dress like slobs, but shorts and a t-shirt are, are more acceptable.
Yeah.
Unless you're,
Yeah, because clients do that too. They'll come in t-shirts and they're totally more casual than who knows what coming to the office every day. They might have been wearing suits. I don't know.
I'm just going to take credit for that because the tech industry started that. I'm just saying.
When I started at Qualigence years ago, I asked what was the dress code and they told me, oh my gosh, tech chic or something.
Yeah.
Like,
I don't even know what that means.
I don't even know either. So
Nobody told me that.
I had to like Google it. And I'm like, what does this mean? And it was just flannel shirts. And, no, I'm just kidding.
It's like, that doesn't even make sense.
Wearing a Geek Squad uniform.
Right. Yeah.
Oh, man. That's funny.
Yeah.
They're pocket protectors.
Yeah, right. No way.
Someone was pulling your leg clearly because nobody told me that.
No, I'm serious. Google it. I'm telling you. I'm going to send you guys pictures.
We actually have like an inside joke at the office one day that we want to pull. We're like, when a new employee starts, like, you know how people come into an interview, like they have like a suit on and everything. You're laughing at. I would love if someone listened to this and like punked me on this, but I probably won't happen. So like, you know how people like come in a suit for an interview and everything, right? I figured we dress casual like we usually do. Interview, if we hire the person, they're probably going to come dressed more casual like the first day. It's typically what happens. So we notice. How funny it would be if like all of us were wearing like full on suits and everything and like business like
that would be so
formal.
Mean.
And then the next day when they come in suits, we're back to normal.
Oh my gosh.
But like, and I told them, I go, it has to be like someone we hire that's like really cool that like can take that. Like
doesn't cry in the parking lot.
Yeah, like we couldn't just do that just to like anybody. Like it would have to be like
I would
specific.
cry in the parking
Me too. I would be like, you don't know what happened.
I'd be like, I interviewed at Qualigence and it was Spirit Week, and so that was fun. It was Decades Day, and so like we had some interesting. I'm like looking around, going, "Do I want to work with these people?"
Was that like the old logo style and everything too?
It was,
or was
just
like
it was just people dressing. It was very interesting.
I see what you're saying.
Yeah,
gotcha.
it was. Yeah.
So obviously we've talked about like companies, like where things are going now. We've talked about remote work. We've talked about all this other stuff. But with these jobs, like they're essential. Ultimately, some of these jobs that are not getting filled are actually essential jobs for us to work and get our stuff and in a timely manner. And some of these things are really important. I mean, even like vehicle that is taking so long to manufacture. Some of these things are really important. Police officers, firefighters, ambulance, etc. Like life-saving things. Like they can't even do their job essentially because they're running on like really old equipment, and that's probably more of the extreme. And even in that world, like even in the police world, the medics and the firefighters and all that, they're still super short-staffed too. Yeah. And that's a whole different world of profession and recruiting and everything, as you guys know. It's kind of more, I feel like, a calling industry than it is like, oh, this is interesting. I should learn this and see if I like it, right? But even in that field, people are saying, I don't want to do that kind of work. So I know, like in some aspects, the company's pay sucks, right? Like that's one factor. The benefits suck, right? The hours suck. The people suck. And I'm overgeneralizing, but in the industry, like, is there any like way to say, hey, a better way to get a candidate in the doors to do X, Y, and Z?
Well, because we're out in it in events and things like that, when we're talking to people, and I always ask people when they come up, when they ask us what we do, I said, well, what's your major pain point right now? Because typically it's HR, like talent acquisition, recruiting leaders that are there. Some business leaders, but for the most part, it's those folks. And they say hiring. And I'm like, okay, well, that could be for two reasons, right? Are you hiring because you're growing? And if you are, great, we can help you with that. That's an awesome problem to have. But what's your other reason?
Yeah.
And they're like, well, we don't really know. And I said, well, why don't we like dig into that further? Because people are leaving, and yes, pay plays somewhat of a factor, but I really think it's your management and your leaders and the fact that they're not advancing in where leadership is going, and they're not bringing themselves and educating themselves on the new way that you should lead people. You know, Steve likes to say this all the time. You manage a process, you lead people. There's a difference. And I think a lot of people in leadership are still in that old mindset of, I'm going to manage people. And people don't want to be managed anymore. So I think there's kind of two issues there of why people, well, you know, why places are hiring.
Right.
And you got to really like dig in and ask those questions. And then, you know, sometimes your leaders don't want to admit that they're not good leaders.
Sure.
And that's difficult pill to swallow. And Melissa and I both go through a leadership training at work. And there's a lot of self-reflection and a lot of times where you look at yourself and say, I am not a good leader for whatever reason.
Right.
And we're open
right?
to being good leaders, right? So can you imagine what a toxic work environment is like when you have a leader that doesn't want to even think that they're not doing their job right?
Sure.
When leading.
Right. And I think a lot of leaders skip the employee side and just focus on the clients.
Yes.
They treat the clients like gold.
Yes.
And that's like, I think that's a huge deal, because ultimately as a leader, like, you got to treat the people that work for us like gold, and then that trickles down.
Well, exactly. Yeah. It's a direct result. I was reading a book, and I'll tell you guys what the book is when I get home and look at the title of the book. However, it was basically, the concept was, if you put your people first, you know, your clients, your customers, your prospects are going to see that. And the man that wrote the book was like, I can walk into a store and I know exactly if the employees are being treated well or not by the way that they approach a customer coming into the store.
Certainly.
Or the way you guys walk into the building. You're like, hey, how's it going? Or you're like, just straight to the tech room and do what you need to do.
There's a problem.
Right. And that's a direct result of the way that you are leading you, or you're leading the next person.
Right.
So,
and it's just like messaging candidates, right? Looking at, we right now have 3 different generations technically in the workforce, which is very unusual, because usually you have 2.
Right.
One predominant, which used to be the baby boomers. It's not anymore, right? So when you're messaging candidates, that even comes across of how are you messaging them? Because like Jen mentioned earlier, there are different importance, things that matter to different generations. And that's a generalization, obviously, but a lot different than the way it used to be even 10 years ago. And so leading people or managing people the way you did 10 years ago, if you have somebody who is in the baby boomer generation, then you also have somebody right out of school, like that is going to be a completely different style of management. And you have to know how to lead people in different areas of their career. And it's more so about helping them to the next step and being very selfless and being a servant leader and kind of pushing those folks forward.
And not leading people the same way for everyone.
Yes,
because everyone is different.
Exactly. What makes you come to work in the morning?
I was just going to ask him that. I was like,
I was reading your mind, really, honestly.
Well, I mean, me personally, I enjoy, in general, I enjoy helping people, and I get the satisfaction from doing that here, because I get to interact with a lot of different people and solve unique problems, and that gives me that, you know, satisfaction. And what's the other word? I don't know, forgetting, like stimulation, I guess.
Gotcha.
Which is nice. You need that. When you go to work, you want to be stimulated, because you don't want to be bored, right?
Yeah,
because
absolutely.
if you come to work every day and the job is too easy, or the job doesn't, you know, provide any unique ways to solve problems, because like us as human beings, we love that. Not everybody does, but like we want to use our brains. You know, it's rewarding. I mean, honestly, like
sometimes I don't.
Yeah,
but
sometimes we don't. But
days.
I mean, why are video games fun? They give you problems to solve in a fun way. Work can be in a similar fashion. You know, especially if it's a job that you have a passion for. So I like technology. I like helping people, bring the two together. I get to solve problems. That's like kind of the whole gist of it, I would say. The rough, but yeah, that like, what about you guys? What kind of, why do you still go into work every day?
I know, I ask
We're gonna
myself
reverse
that question every morning.
I mean, I changed careers. And I got into, nobody wants to go into recruiting. You just kind of fall into it.
I've learned that, by the way.
But I was in sales before, so it wasn't that far of a swing. But yeah, and I worked for really large companies, and series of events led me here. And it was a friend of a friend who referred me. I just started working at Qualigence, and I'd never worked for a small company before.
Mm-hmm.
And I've been awarded more opportunity here than anywhere else. I have been more supported and more pushed in a way and challenged, to your point. I do like to be challenged, but I've been challenged so much so even during COVID, of things that I didn't know I was capable of doing in my career. And if you would have asked me almost 5 years ago, like, would you be doing this? I would have probably been like, no, I'm going to, I'm not going to manage people. Like, I don't know how to do that. But our CEO is very supportive in that fact of he pushes us to go outside of our comfort zones, and he has a very high bar. And our executive team is very supportive in the ideas that we have, and I have never been allowed the opportunity to be creative, and I have ideas, and my CEO and my boss, Devin, let me ride with them and just say, let's see what you can do. And then if it fails, it fails. Don't do it again.
Right.
And try something else. But they never shut anything down. And some ideas that I have might sound crazy, or we might have not done anything before, but I've been allowed to do those things. And that, to me, you chase the money early in your career and you do all those things. But like I just felt like I was on a hamster wheel and nothing else. Yeah. Like I wasn't doing anything.
You were powering someone else's light bulb, basically.
Yes. And I was giving everything to everybody else just to chase a paycheck.
Yeah.
And I'm busy all the time, and our schedules, we were just talking about it today, are always nuts, and there's always something going on. But that is exciting to me, and I love the people that I work with because it's a small company, so you get to know everybody very well. But I love seeing like somebody come in with, never being in this industry before, and we get them to a space that they're doing amazing and maybe have their own team now or whatever, or they leave us, but they left with a new skill set and stuff. That makes me really happy. And the creativity makes me happy, and the challenges and problem solving and the stuff I was never allowed to do before.
Right.
It's a pretty cool feeling when you find that. And I never understood that until I started working here, because I used to look at some friends and they'd be like, oh my God, I love my job. And I'm like, really? I don't. I love mine. Yeah. So it's really cool to find that the space that you belong, and and we're, we have a good team, and it's fun to go to work. It's fun to hang out with these guys. So,
especially me.
It's fair. That's good. I mean, it's a great, solid answer. Like it's the truth, of course.
People ask me that in interviews all the time. They're like, what keeps you here?
She's always on podcasts.
But they, no, like hopper. I'm talking when but they, and it used to be a hard answer. Like not when I worked here, when I worked other places and I was interviewing people. But when I worked here, it's very easy for me to answer that question now, which I think is pretty cool. And that must mean I'm doing something right.
I mean, absolutely. And I think that's true. When you wake up in the morning, you're happy to go to work. I mean, there's always days.
Sure.
I'd say the only reason I don't want to go to work is because I want to sleep longer.
Yeah, sure.
Yeah. That's really it.
I understand
know.
that.
COVID spoiled us. Yes. Yeah. But
you just roll out of bed and open up my laptop and I'm ready to go.
But it's a cool feeling because I don't want to be one of those people like in my 60s and stuff and being like still miserable or
I wish I would have done something different for work or whatever. You got to try different things. Yeah.
And this was a risk to start working here because I never worked for a small company before, so I didn't know what that was like or if I'd fit. Like I thought maybe I am cut out. Maybe I have to be at bigger companies. So yeah.
Interesting. That's good.
Everything she said.
We have similar backgrounds too in terms of like big companies to here.
So just being, it's the people, it's the leaders, and really everything she said is
spot
the
on.
same. Yep.
So last question then. Is this going to get better or is this going to get worse?
It's going to get worse.
Oh, wow.
Oh,
I do.
I always feel, I feel like
I don't want to
certain
be that
things are
pessimistic because I'm not a pessimistic person, but I think it's going to flip, and I think it's going to be now businesses are going to start pulling back.
We're already seeing it a little bit because you can't ride the wave all. You can't be on the top.
Certainly.
It's got to come down. I don't think it's going to be, and I'm no economist, but I don't think it's going to be 2008, 2009.
No.
Scaries, anything
I don't
like
think so
that.
Either.
I just think it might change. Like it might just be different. I don't know in what way, but
it could be better.
Yeah.
I mean,
at certain aspects,
we probably need a correction. I mean, things are like way upside down in certain aspects.
Sure.
I mean, a little bit of help wouldn't hurt.
Yeah.
I think people are going to pivot too, which a lot of companies have. A lot of companies are, when COVID hit and they had to kind of like, even we pivoted for a short period of time and like opened up to just different ways of doing business or different opportunities that we could take advantage of to help us keep our employees employed and getting them paychecks. So I don't think it'll be worse in that sense, but I do think I think you put it right. It's going to change. It's just, where's that change?
Right.
How's it going to change?
I'm not sure anything can be worse than a pandemic. So I do feel like.
What about another pandemic?
Well, there could be that. But I do feel like now we at least know, you know what I mean? Like everyone panicked at first, obviously, because nobody had ever experienced anything like this before. But to your point, I think we would pivot, but like maybe some cool things will come out of it. Like it did with COVID, right?
I'm sure.
Like for us, having people not here in Michigan, that was huge. Like, a huge talent pool, like Jen said, and I feel like we're kind of evening out like half and half, local and non at this point.
So like companies like Apple, Tesla, where they're like sending out these emails to their employees, like, hey, you're
welcome back,
effective immediately. If you don't come in, like you're basically fired.
Dear Lord. Oh, wow.
Oh, yeah. You didn't hear about that?
No.
Tesla, right?
I'll
not surprised there. Is he going to hear this?
That'd be surprising.
You know what, though? I often think about that, like Quicken Loans as an example.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, they were like, everyone go remote way before COVID. And then they called everyone back in. And then COVID hit. So then they sent everyone back home. Is it going to ebb and flow? Like, is it just one of those things where it could...
But when your culture is built on like come into this cool place,
which is what Quicken is.
Have some Slurpees and throw the ball, and ring the bell and all that stuff.
Right. And
but that's Google. Not everything people need either.
No, that's true. And I think the people who probably stayed there for that because there are people back there. But even like Google and Amazon, they built these beautiful spaces and they're half empty now, but kind of like us, if you want to come in the office, that's an option. I think being open to that, to say, as long as you're productive and I'm seeing that production from you, then I tell my team and any new hire that's interviewing with me, I'm like, if you have Wi-Fi, I don't care. Like, and you're
good Wi-Fi though, because
good Wi-Fi. That's true. Maybe I should actually say that. But
Scott at work will always come to the office because he's like, I hate my Wi-Fi.
Yeah, it's bad. I upgraded mine because it was bad. But I'm open to that. Work the times that have the flexibility, do what you want. But you got to do your job, though, still. And I think if companies are open to that, you're going to attract good talent.
Yeah.
Work-life balance. People want that now more so than ever, I think.
Yeah.
And some people work better outside of the 9 to 5, right? Like some people, maybe later in the day or letting them sleep in, or they get up really early. I mean, I have one person on my team who gets up and starts work at 5.
Ugh.
5 p.m.
5 a.m.
I'm like, what?
But she's available for like we call them the core hours where, these are times we need to be able to have touch points with you. And then with the notion of if something major needs to be discussed, she's only a text away and can hop on. And obviously we compensate all of that, but you know, and
I think flex
not
time,
compensate, but like with flex time and things like that. But
we did that for employee engagement of like, listen, everyone did so much during COVID and gave so much to keep everything going and get scrappy and all of that, and like to reward people and have like solid work-life balance, because that took a toll on people. You know, we started flex time of like, if you finish all your billables like before Friday, take every Friday off, you know, do your thing. Like, you know, if you've got a doctor's appointment, don't worry about taking PTO on a Wednesday. Go to your doctor's appointment and make up the time, log on earlier or stay on later or whatever,
right.
you know, like just being there for your employees and knowing what they want is, I think, is the biggest thing that clients need to be open to.
Yeah, I think definitely that's cool too, because like even in schools now, like, well, during the pandemic, asynchronous like way of doing things was actually really nice for a lot of people, for a lot of students. I was one of them. I really enjoyed it.
Yeah.
So, I mean, I think, you know, like you said, like having flex time, I think that really, you know, encourages people to do a better job because they enjoy their life a little bit more outside of the office or work.
Yeah.
But like, have you guys seen people taking advantage of remote work in a different way, as far as, you know, them working one full-time job and then having another one on the side? So working 40 hours, like, because that's opened up, you know, that kind of ability. And do you think that is, I don't know if you guys have seen it, but
I mean, people that do that, like, you know, our video producer, he's always just kind of done that, right? Like did his 9 to 5 with, you know, and then did his kind of video production stuff, you know, as a second gig. But I don't think a lot of people do, because recruiting is a weird space, because you're kind of always on, right? Because you might have to take calls at weird times.
Candidate calls you back after they're on work.
When you have you have West Coast hours, we do international, you know, so just adjusting your schedule. So I mean, I guess you could, like, on the weekends, but we haven't seen it internally.
Yeah, but like regular, I guess people could do that.
Yeah.
Like my wife, she was working at Comerica 40 hours a week, and then she got an offer for a contract to also work 40 hours a week for DTE. And so she was like, if I don't tell one company about it, and then I don't tell the other one about it,
but
I can just do both.
Told them right now.
Well, they don't know, obviously, but like she worked Comerica and DTE at the same time.
Yeah,
because you get your work done,
right? That's
like,
the
what
thing.
Does it matter?
It doesn't matter if you want to go. If you want to go nuts and work, you do you.
Right.
And I've always said, like, here, like, if I give you like a 40-hour work week and you only work 20, like, that's probably my fault for not giving you enough work.
Right. Or I need to challenge.
Or you're
you
really good.
Yeah. But just be efficient.
Yeah. Which is
smarter,
fine.
not harder.
Fine. Yeah. No problem, really. I mean, So
exactly.
Well, I mean, I know that we're going into an interesting time in you know, the economy and things like that. I'm very interested to see how it pans out, truthfully. I mean, I hopefully not at the stake of so many people's jobs or well-being, but, you know, how many jobs are open. I'm sure that there's going to be some readjustment. So,
us too. Jobs have to be open for us to work. So.
Well, that's true. That's true. I mean, you guys are still pretty busy.
Yeah.
So that's good.
Slowing down a bit, but not in the way.
Not in a
still
bad way.
busy, but not as crazy busy as we were, which is good, because I think people are having a summer, you know.
Yeah, and that's fine.
That's good.
I think we need it.
Yes.
I think we need it. It's been insane. So
yeah.
Well, I appreciate both of your time and Cassim as usual. I mean, it's been really, really cool, and, you know, it's been a good conversation. I think at least I've learned a lot.
Yeah.
Thanks for having us. I'm not sure if we're invited back, but
we'll play it back and see how it goes. All right, you guys have a good one.
You too. Thanks.
See ya.